Whoa, 27 years after the original Resident Evil was released. That's 25 years after the second one was released. And we got 3 great remakes and a few other great games on the way. And a fourth, while disappointing, it's still a fun game. I think it being a remake hurt it, considering how great the original is, even though I don't think it would stand well on its own. But it's still fun. I don't have much to say against it. 25 years after Resident Evil 2, the original from 1998, it's still considered to be one of the best. It still ranks one of the highest. Top 5, considering all things, or top 4, depends on who you think, when you see ranks of Resident Evil games. Yeah, the number 2 with games is a real popular thing. The number 2 makes a lot of great games, a sign of greatness for a lot of games. It's also a sign of turdness for some other series, but that's not the point here. The original Resident Evil had a limited budget. They had to prove the worth of this franchise for it to go on. And so, with a limited budget, they made some cheap-looking FMVs live-acted, and some of them are CGI. The CGI mostly introduce monsters or show doors getting open. The acted ones even include some CGI shots, like the clouds, and the intro has a moment of shaky cam. But the effects are pretty decent on the dogs, on the zombie dogs. Too bad the shaky cam make it hard to see the action. And it's obvious that the blood is not blood, even though it's meant to look like blood. At least the success of this game gave them the right to have a bigger budget, and rightfully so, to make a full motion video fully CGI. It's impressively detailed for a product of its time and very well animated. Even to this day you see a proper frame rate. There's no skipping in animation. They don't feel like some frames were skipped. Compare this to RPGs. Mostly the Final Fantasy games of that era where it feels like some frames are missing from the cinematics. The animation looks kinda clunky in them. Also, going back to the intro of Resident Evil 1, it shows the characters and it doesn't tell you about them. All it tells you is who they are and their mission. Resident Evil 2 went further on that. It tells you the characters. It shows you what they can do and what they are about. Their quest, it tells you their quest, their purpose for coming to the city, and it gives a glimpse of camaraderie between the two characters and their moments.
What have we got here?
Before the shared moments of the opening cinematic, each character in their CD has moments of them, displaying them, focused on them before they meet, presenting some quite nice details. Like this one for Claire. It's repeat the style of the first CGI cutscene in the first Resident Evil. But it's natural, but the head of the zombie moves naturally, and you see the reaction of the character in cutscene. You see how Claire panics. It's fully animated and in-depth details. You see her eyes widely open. In the original Resident Evil, you see slow motion animation and no reaction. Yeah, the player has to play. I actually like the design in the original Resident Evil for this one, but presentation matters, so I'm glad they did this way to introduce the character properly. And the way the opening cinematic ends, you see different motions. For Leon A, Claire B, the car turns around and they both look at the truck about to hit their car. And you see the background of each character, showing which direction each one is going. So this attention to detail is amazing, because in the opposite direction, in Claire A, Leon B, the hood, the bonnet, hits the signpost, and Leon looks in the rearview mirror to see the truck about to hit him to tell Claire to exit. And it's a massive jump ahead in quality compared to the original. Even the voice actors, they got some seasoned voice actors. Claire is voiced by Jubilee from the 92 X-Men cartoon. As much as I'd love to play the original version in its original form, I'm actually glad they brought Claire Redfield into the fold instead of Ilsa Walker. There's something special about the character being connected to one of the playable characters in the original, instead of being completely unrelated. And no, it's not because of the meme of keep the Redfield bloodline going. It's mostly because of Code Veronica. I doubt you'd expect to hear that. But no. I like it that Leon works with the Redfields, both siblings. Claire is quite an interesting character in her own right. I actually don't know how to express this, but I like the intrigue of the younger sister coming looking for her brother 2 months after his last mission with the RPD. And her moments with other characters interacting with the other protagonist, with Leon's Mr. Scott Kennedy, with Sherry, with Irons and Marvin and Robert Kindo. These moments are good. Not all of them are character building. The one with Kindo and the one with Marvin aren't exactly character revelations, but they are interesting. The one with Leon Scott Kennedy, at least I can tell he's a rookie cop who comes, but he knows what to do. The department is so happy he was joining them, they wanted to celebrate his coming.
Sorry, but it looks like your party has been cancelled.
I mean, who would expect that two outsiders would come to the city and survive it, with one other survivor they find here? There is a fourth survivor that went a separate way, but Ada went separate ways. Yes, that's a Resident Evil 4 joke, and I didn't mean for it to happen. One of them is a rookie cop, the other doesn't have that much experience in the cop business, but she still managed to survive. So that's very impressive. I think Leon's relationship with Ada is more interesting than it is with Claire. But I still like to see it when these two characters interact in future projects. Well, future for 1998, and future for these characters after this game. I couldn't really decide which of these elements to focus on first. The NPCs or the monsters. Both are very interesting in this game because NPCs... Okay, I'll start with the NPCs. You got Robert Kindo, you got Marvin Brana, you got Ben Bertolucci for Leon, and you got Brian Irons for Claire.
Shut up! You couldn't possibly understand what's happened.
Sherry and Ada are playable at certain points, that's why I don't count them as the NPCs. And then you got their interactions with Annette.
You're about to die anyway.
And it shows some fancy skill surviving, even if you don't see her survive there. You see the characters, they interact with you, mostly in helpful ways. Robert wants to keep you safe, and he locks the door behind you. I like this version of Robert more than the one with aiming a shotgun at Leon's head and saying his lines. Not trusting him, getting mad at the rookie cop who just came to town this night. It feels a bit nicer to see him comforting a fellow human, a fellow survivor. But you either hear him die tragically once you exit, or you see a cutscene of him dying. And this cutscene of them dying is one of the interesting things. First you see them, you interact with them. This is a cutscene. They don't die in the same cutscene, and they don't die off screen. In the original Resident Evil, you have Richard, who doesn't die in the first cutscene. You either reach him, or you reach him late and he's dead. If you reach him before he dies, you have to immediately get the serum for him and return to see him die. And Enrique dies in the same cutscene. When characters in this game help you, you feel bad for them, except for Irons, the police chief. You feel bad for them for dying. It feels more tragic. You kind of feel some attachment to them before they die. Ben and Brian die in different ways in the A and B scenario. The A scenario for both of them, they get to swallow an embryo from a G, and it trips their torsos exiting in a gross, disgusting way. It could have been so glorious or so unnerving in the remake had they done it in this such detail. In the B scenario, you see Ben get slashed and he dies from his wounds. Brian gets ripped apart and his upper part is thrown upward, opening the floor door. Marvin gives you a card key to open the doors and find survivors to help them. And then you see a monster transformation face front. You see his face transforming. He stands up, you think he might be able to help you, but he transforms and he tries to bite you. This is one of the most impactful scenes ever. In Resident Evil 3, you have Tyrell who dies in the same cutscene, either by blowing himself or finding a bomb in a safe and unexpectedly die.
Now leave me alone!
Yeah, I forgot the guy who wanted to be a writer and yelled at Jill.
Told you! I'm not leaving! Never!
who dies off screen. You only find him get chewed by zombies after you find the oil additive. Probably.
What have we got here?
Monster introduction is another thing that makes this game one of the most impressive classics in its genre, and one of the best games ever made. The opening cinematics, for example, showcase zombies. They're different from the original Resident Evil. The first one, they're pretty dumb and all bald. This one there are different models. Not the male ones all look the same, but at least they have different outfits, variant. And there are the female ones, but in the opening cinematic you see them quite distinct, very distinct, different models. You see how they scare, how they trick, like that one playing Possum introduced for Leon first see and stops his car for. You see how they endure bullets at their chest, but a bullet to the brain is instant kill. Leon learns from that experience with the one holding his leg and shoots the one behind Claire in the head, instantly killing it. And although you can do this as a game mechanic, but the one in the car comes out once Leon hits the brake really hard, flies out the window, hits the line post, and dies instantly because how hard his head hits the signpost. And then you get the liquor. There's a build-up of it moving fast, really fast on the window. And the next shot, this is exclusive to A. This pre-rendered background is exclusive to Scenario A wing for the liquor introduction. You see from outside the window. It's telling you to expect the monster to jump from the window to get you. It brings a sense of terror. This can't be replicated in modern over-the-shoulder camera. It can only happen in this fixed camera, and they utilized it perfectly. And then a cinematic of it crawling. The animation is fascinating. You see the characters, look at it, it's slithering on the wall. The character is panicking, and the eyeless monster reacts. And you see the saliva drops from the monster's mouth, and the slow motion is effectively used this time. No frame skipping in a cheap way like in the original Resident Evil zombie introduction. Compare this to the Hunter introduction and the original Resident Evil. It looks like a Windows 95 screensaver, or Windows 98. I mean, I guess it's cheap. I get they had to deal with a low budget, but the difference in quality is, wow, it's great to look at. I mean, the details on the liquor is very impressive even to this day. I mean, this came out 3 years after Toy Story, a cinematic CGI movie. Who would have expected that a PlayStation 1 would have a cutscene this grand with great animation to boot? And then there's the introduction of William in his G form.
You know where they put the key to this cell? I have it right here, officer. But I'm not about to leave this cell. Those zombies aren't the only things crawling around out there.
My mom called and told me to go to the police station because it was too dangerous to stay at home.
From the look of things, I'd say she was probably right. But it's dangerous here as well. You'd better come with me.
But there's something out there. I don't know what it is, but I saw it. Much larger than any of those zombies. And it's coming after me.
What was that?
What was that?
That's what I was telling you about. It's here.
Sherry, wait!
Like I said, I'm not leaving this cell. Get out of here before you lead it right to me.
People talk about him, either Ben or Sherry, but indirectly, and it's followed by his scream. It's haunting. Even to this day, I still find it unnerving. I kinda wish the remake had this, a special, unique, memorable scream for him. I mean, Help Me, I guess, works, but I mean for the monster. You see his back first, and you see hints of him in Scenario A for Claire, because of his involvement with Sherry. He's very active in that scenario because of her. There's less of his presence in Leon's scenario because he's not with Sherry. You hear his scream, and then the cinematic, when Annette tells about how he became a monster, how her husband became a monster. You see his body, but you don't see his face. I mean, sure, there's a print of him on one of the game CDs, but the build-up and the eye you see in the intro, the final shot of the intro, and the title screen. Memorable, great build-up. And when you see him transform, it's ugly. It's grotesque, and Even for PS1 graphics, it's still memorable and great looking. Whoa. I guess they didn't need a cutscene for dogs because this is a police station, and it's probable that, and it's definite that there are dogs. The one time there is a cutscene for zombie dogs is if you walk past a cage in Leon, and you see a dog hitting the cage bars. Why are they in a holding cell? That's an interesting question to ponder. I guess a cop had to survive or one of the prisoners and they had to lock him up. But no one could have expected them to break out of the holding cell from how hard and repeatedly they hit the cell doors. And then there for scenario B there's Mr. X. A helicopter dropping him, dropping a canister. A canister opens, roof collapses, and there he is. You see Lawrence Fishburne standing. I can't be the only one seeing Lawrence Fishburne, right? The alligator introduction is one of the most terrifying things ever. It's not in a full motion CGI cutscene, but it's still very terrifying. Although it makes no sense. The place is too small for him. In the remake, both characters move on the same path. There is no change, except for the second scenario where character B fight the final fight against William in the train. In the original, scenario A character enters different locations, and scenario B enters different locations. So, like, scenario B prepares the train for the escape, and scenario A characters go through the mall disc door. Scenario B character can enter places that are inaccessible to them in their A scenario and are normally exclusive to the B scenario to the other character. Like Claire can enter the door puzzle room, the chest where Leon and A fight the G form and in B form fights the first form of William. And Leon in his B scenario can enter the chief's office and his workshop. This feature is kinda unique to this game. I don't think I played another game that has something similar. In the remakes, the interaction of the two protagonists is in a few cutscenes and a couple of notes. There is no radio communication exchange.
Can you meet me there?
I'm on my way.
Radio communication exchange is one of the better aspects of this. When they tell each other which place to go or how to exit and meet, and when Claire tells Leon to take Sherry from the security room and prepare an exit for them, and the differences between how they interact in different paths, there's a certain delight to it that doesn't exist in the remake. That is one of the features that makes the original special. And when you change their suits in character's A scenario, you see your character in different suit, while scenario B character is in the default suit. Save this and play it in scenario B with the save file. You see character A in the costume you chose for them, for him or her, and character B is in the new costume you choose. The same cutscene. The remake made it easier by being able to choose suits on the menu or in the pause menu, but for an old game this function is actually unique and pretty interesting. The word innovative might be suitable for this situation. And there's the meeting of Ada and Sherry in scenario B for Leon. After Sherry tells Claire she can't reach up the same way she exited, she goes to the shutter door area and escapes Ada and drops her locket. While in Leon A's Claire B, she keeps her locket and Mr. X is after it. That's kinda weird, but it's an interesting change. The difference of interactions in both games are pretty different and highly different, but the interactions in the original is special and unique. There's been more effort put into them. This game has two different paths. The path you choose depends on which CD you play first, and this kinda makes it easier to accept for more players. This is more accessible. I mean, there are a lot of people who don't like multiple endings, and there are those who rent and return games after one walkthrough, one playthrough. They don't like to replay games. Resident Evil 2 is more suitable for this kind of attitude, because compare it to the first has multiple paths. And this one has a clear cut how to find both endings. While in the original, in Chris you kinda have it easy, but there are 4 different endings for him and 4 different endings for Jill, and I still don't know how to activate which meeting with Barry in the jail scenario in each game. Like, how do I know when to stop the jail sandwich or when do I find the shotgun and I'm able to return it to the wall? That's not really an easy thing to determine in the original game. The branching paths is one of the cool aspects. I'll give you that, I agree with that, and that's one of the reasons I love the game. But it doesn't make it that accessible for the gamers of the type who don't like to replay games very often. And for each character there are 4 different endings. One of them is shared for each character. The one where the 2 playable characters escape while the rest of the cast die. And in Resident Evil 3 there's the aspect of how does deciding whether to push Nemesis off the bridge or you jumping decides whether Barry comes to save you or Carlos is the pilot. For those who never play the game, this kinda requires a guide. And this is not comforting. There are a few simple things in Scenario A that when you do them, they affect Scenario B without interfering with the plot. Like, when you see Marvin, you can either shoot him or leave him. If you leave him, you see him back in Scenario B character. If you shoot him, you see a default zombie, a generic zombie. If you take items from the locker in Scenario A, you don't find the same item when you go to the same locker using Scenario B character. If you kill the crocodile or alligator in Scenario A, then he doesn't return in Scenario B. But if you shoot him instead of killing him, you see him escape. Scenario B character sees a broken wall, and when they reach the end of the tunnel to the gate where they see the water, you see the alligator jumps out for Scenario B character. So this is impressive. It adds to the replay value without interfering with the game or changing the scenario in a different way or changing the plot, making it more joyful. Oh yeah, the console with the fingerprints. If you access it with Scenario A character, you can enter the secret room with Scenario B character if you access the same console and the same run. It's a secret room that entering it adds nothing to the scenario, but adds to the experience quite a bit. And if Scenario A character takes the machine gun because the machine gun is better to handle the G embryo with, Scenario B character can find another machine gun in the secret room after killing 3 or 4 lickers, or maybe dodging them slowly with some difficulty. While majority of lists probably rank Resident Evil 4 on top of the ranking list for the games in the series, whether it's main only or including spin-offs, or whether you're talking about the original or the remake of Resident Evil 4, there is one thing that is obviously better in this game than it is in the original Resident Evil 4. No QuickTime events. Oh my god, those hurt my finger. Not all of them. These are just simple R1, L1, these are okay. But the one where you need to rapidly press the same button, these hurt the finger. Hurt it. They really hurt it. Because you have to repeat rapidly, really fast, and it's easy to fail in them. And Krauser QuickTime events are annoying too. The one in the cutscene where you knife fight him. I hate that fight scene. I'm really happy the remake did without that thing called QuickTime events. Resident Evil 4 remake, obviously. And both 4 and 2 had a cancelled version before playing the full release of the final cut or whatever. The remake of Resident Evil 2 is still great though. I finished it multiple times and I still love to finish it. But the many things that make the original, the 1998 special, make it a more standout experience. Ben locking himself up to keep himself safe is more interesting than Brian locking him up for Mr. X to squeeze his head like this. And that happens in both Scenario A and Scenario B doesn't make it very special. Same goes with the death of Brian Irons. He dies the same way in both scenarios, and like some said, his death is nothing special compared to the original where the torso snaps completely. The embryo just pops out of Brian's stomach in both scenarios and that's it. It doesn't look especially gruesome or that visually interesting.